Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Off the Record, the opinions podcast here at the Daily 49er. My name is Leila Nunez. I am your host, and for this episode, I invited three very special, incredible people to join me and discuss all things about the LGBTQ plus community, the beauties, the imperfections, and, this episode is such a great conversation with such deep thoughts that I encourage you all to listen to until the end. And if you have any thoughts about this episode, you are free to leave them in the comment sections below. And yeah, without further ado, let's get right into this podcast.
Hi. My name is Manny, and I'm a theater arts major here, getting my BFA in performance, and my pronouns are he, him. And yeah, I think that's all for the introduction, right?
That was so good. You're so talented. You're so talented. You really ate that, man. You really served. I'm Abbey Toler, Abbey Cat. I use all pronouns, but like currently my fave is just they, them. It's really nice. Middle ground one, love it, lover, giver. And I'm a journalism major and a theater minor. Yeah, that's me.
Hey, my name is Coda. I go by Coda Bear if we're gonna add an animal. We love it. I'm a theater major. We'll go back to you for the animal.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I am 24 years old. I'm a theater major. I'm a senior, a transfer, and that's about it. I'm a he-they.
Yes, we love a he-they.
Thank you.
How did you find your passion for, the art style that you're currently working on?
I mean, I think I was always just aware of, actors and movies and TV shows. I just always thought that was such an interesting, concept. And I wasn't aware of acting, but I was aware of, the fact that people would get together and, sing songs and, film movies. And I'm like, that's really cool.
Yeah.
And then I didn't think about it until I got to high school, and I wasn't doing anything my freshman year besides just, taking my classes. And then, interesting enough, my back in the day, my youth pastor was like, you should do theater. And I joined my sophomore year, and then after that I just kind of was just enthralled into this community. I think primarily it was definitely the community that brought me in.
Yeah.
I mean, just as a queer little kid growing up in a conservative household and environment, being part of an art form, specifically theater, was extremely liberating and educational. Because I was able to become more aware of other opinions and belief systems and yeah, I think that's kind of what drew me in. And then after that, the more I learned about acting and musical theater, I just kind of felt that's where I wanted to spend my time and energy doing.
Love that. Do you have a favorite musical?
Oh God.
Oh my God. I don't know. I think kind of Rocky Horror.
Stop. Rocky Horror. But
No,
we're doing Rocky Horror right now.
We are doing Rocky Horror.
Come see it. Anyway.
No, I mean it's not Rocky Horror, but you guys should definitely come see Rocky Horror. I favorite musical. I don't know if I have a favorite musical. I do have a favorite play right now. I think I saw The Inheritance on Broadway a few years back. And they're actually doing they're doing their first national tour, and they're in LA right now. The Geffen. And I really want to go see it. Yeah. If anyone, it's about this it's basically a commentary on specifically. I think it's very specific, so it's not as inclusive as the entire LGBTQ plus community, but it's about specifically gay men and their identity and the way in which they exist within not only the LGBTQ plus community, but then within the world itself, and how they treat each other through generation in and out.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's it's a 7-hour play. It's divided into 2 parts.
Wow.
Yeah, so part 1, part 2, but it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay, gosh. Okay, so for me, let's just get it out there. I was bullied really bad in elementary and middle school for being queer before I even knew I was queer. And that really stunted my my journey on discovering myself, especially gender-wise and sexuality-wise, because I didn't really immediately like boys or girls. I didn't really like anybody. I was just being a kid and dealing with TBH life stuff and home stuff. So it was really hard. But I found solace through actually show choir. I was a show choir kid. And what was weird about that is I'm originally from Moreno Valley, and like It's not like everyone is homophobic there, of course. There's queer people literally everywhere. But even where you think there won't be queer people, they're always there.
We're here.
We are literally everywhere. But even there, I felt like at that school, even in that like that art form, I felt very ostracized. I didn't have a lot of friends. But my acting teacher, she really just like let me be who I was. I had my little pixie cut. I used to wear a binder because I just didn't I presented a lot more mask, and like now I'm more comfortable existing within like the masculinity and femininity. But yeah, show choir was like really the first thing that got me, and then I started doing community theater, like regional theater outside of school, and that was where I found more people like me. The like weirdos, the queerdos, if you will, like for real, like and seeing people, especially older people, and at the time, who knows how old they actually were, but to me, who was like 13, I was like, oh my god, adults. They could have been our age, which we are adults, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Anyway, like seeing them express themselves fully, I think was very inspiring to me. I was like, oh, I can do this. And then I actually went to an arts high school, not like OSHA or anything like that. It was called Encore, shout out, in Riverside, and now it's shut down for a lot of really like crazy reasons, like money laundering. But like, because people would be like, oh, you go to an art school like Victorious, and we'd be like, no, no, girl, no.
It wasn't like that.
Actually, not at all. But anyway, all of that aside, when I got to that school, all of the things that I was made fun of for and like ostracized for, I was suddenly celebrated for. And I didn't even like myself, but it really, really helped me in the journey of liking myself and being open with myself, because I never like came out in high school or anything. It was just very obvious that I was queer. It was really obvious. I just never said it. And I also never was like, I'm straight. I just was never like, I'm this or that. You know what I mean? But yeah, anyway, I turned that all into like a whole thing. But yeah,
No, I love it.
musical theater is my passion, just like you were saying. Well, you like, I don't know, who knows?
I love it. It's so funny hearing you guys. It's so funny hearing you guys because I literally find so many commonalities. Like I went to an arts high school too. I was bullied too. Anyways, going to an arts high school was like the best thing that ever happened to me. Literally, I don't know what happened, but I ended up there. I think like you, I always knew I wanted to do something with it. And it took me so long to even be like, I'm an actor. But now I'm like out and proud about it. Because I know we're different and I know we're like, people admire to do what we do.
Yeah,
and
period.
not to gas us up like that. But it's really hard. And I think going to that arts high school, like Manny, it was more about the community. Like I didn't even know. I always wish I could go back and like be more dedicated about it. Like really do my craft. Because I felt like had I started with the level of commitment I have now, who knows? But we're not at that level. We're like, we're young. We're literally coming out of the closet, struggling. I wasn't even out in high school. But having that community really, like, if I had gone to like a normal high school, I can just see myself being so repressed, and I don't feel that way.
Can I make a comment real quick?
Please.
I actually, so not to get into a whole conversation about how like I don't have a relationship with my father, but like sidebar, I lived with him for like a tiny bit,
Right.
and then he made me leave my arts high school, and I went to, in my junior year of high school, I had to switch over to a public high school that had like, I don't even know, like 5 times the student population.
Yeah.
It was bad. It was really bad because it was like that little kid that I had been getting bullied was like back at the forefront. And I was also like in an unsafe household. It was a lot. But then I got to go back to my arts high school. But like just when you said that, like if you had to go to a it was devastating. Like it like ruined my life.
That's horrible.
But like it was really bad. But like see, I'm good. I ended up back at that high school.
Yeah.
I won prom queen. So
You
like
did?
okay, get this. Real quick. Let's be real.
Sidebar.
I won homecoming princess freshman, sophomore, and junior year, and then I won prom queen senior year. So I went from being like the most ostracized and bullied little kid to being like the most celebrated. And like, okay, not to like gas myself up, but like it's just because I was like nice to everybody. When you're genuinely just like kind to people and open to people, it makes a difference.
Yes.
And like I would say that in all of us and in a lot of the people that I meet, like queer people, we learn to take a darkness and transform it into lightness, and that is what puts us forth in the world. You know what I mean? Helps us
through healing as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because there are unhealed gays, but like in our community too, like there is a lot of resentment. There's a lot of stabbing and like fierceness that like we and I think it comes from us trying to be okay with who we are and our place in it all, but there is a lot of pain, and that can manifest into a lot of ugly too.
And it's a constant battle.
Yeah.
Because like I'm sure none of us are completely healed.
Right.
No, not even straight people or like non-queer people.
Right.
Nobody's completely healed.
Yeah.
But like I feel like queer people just tend to have to learn and figure out how to heal themselves in a way at least, or get by, or else there's like, it's like, what else are you gonna do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What else are you gonna do? It's either like heal and figure things out or hide. Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah. But then that's the thing is like, especially for people that for queer people that are out or are outed, like there is no place to hide at that point.
Yes.
You know, so it really is, you are exposed to the entire world in many ways, in many facets, and then you then have to like figure out how you're gonna go about it, and luckily I think for most of us we do find that like this path of like healing and trying to find community in whatever community that we can and we can have, and I feel like that is like, it's definitely like a specific thing that like that we can experience like as a community, is kind of the kind of exposure to judgment, to criticism and stuff like that, but then still trying to find like that self-love so that we can like
absolutely, because when you're able to like be okay. We were already mentioned this. We are in Rocky Horror right now. The Rocky Horror Show, if you're not familiar, is extraordinarily queer. Like, Rocky is so hypersexualized and so open that for a lot of us who have repressed that in a way, not just in queerness, but just in general, like repressed this like openness about sexuality and even gender expression. It's like we are both playing such like gender fluid characters in this show. We both are very gender fluid people, but still, like it's a different,
and to do that as a character is different than to do it as
it's
a
different
person.
Absolutely. But I was gonna say is that just one, a lot of people opened up about home problems.
Oh man,
and that was just heartbreaking to hear about how like we are, like we were saying, queer people that are now adults trying to heal ourselves and are not even in safe situations where we can go about properly healing ourselves. And that is just now. It's even now, even as now, and
think it's like a problem of our youth, a problem of our past, but
it's a constant. It's a constant. And I remember being told by a couple people that like and this is gonna sound like I'm how do I say this? It's gonna sound like I don't want it to sound like I'm being self-absorbed, but I was told by a couple people that they view me as like an example of like genuine out and proud queerness, and that like I could tear up talking about it right now because I don't always see myself as that. Especially, I'm just gonna keep it real. When I'm in the theater department, I find it a lot easier to be like fruity, you know what I mean? Very fruity. I find it very easy to be very queer. Like the strawberries. I find it very easy to just be like very, I don't know, open about my identity. And I don't think it's the journalism department here that makes me feel not open. I think it's more of just like I don't know if it's an insecurity, just because they're different environments. I don't think that this one's necessarily a stifling environment. I don't think that there's anyone that if I'm like
repressive.
I don't think anyone's gonna be like, you stop doing that. But I mean, sometimes it just feels like, especially like I feel like because of my identity and how much that has to do with me as a person, I feel like it could almost ruin objectivity in some cases. And so I have this battle of myself of like, am I valid as a journalist while being so hyper like I don't know, just expressive of my identity and what that means to me. And I don't know, so that's like a battle that I just a thing in my head, even if that's just in my head. That's not something I have to worry about over there. So it really just made me feel nice to know that like the way that I present myself, and this goes back to what you were saying, is like the way that we are open about our identity and the way we are open about ourselves, it literally does encourage other people, whether they're younger than us, older than us, other people just in general, because you never know. There are old gays that are still not out. I was just talking to a friend of mine who has an uncle that is in the closet, and it's and like people know, but like he's not comfortable coming out, and it's like that is so sad, and he's like in his 50s. That's sad. You know what I mean? I mean, it's not. It's just it's just tough, but you know, you never know what literally just being yourself can do. And after that conversation, honestly, it made me want to be a little bit more vocal about who I am at all times, not just when I'm creating art.
I wanted to ask about that because obviously it's very hard coming out and it's a struggle, and like defining yourself, do you feel pressured to do that?
I mean, so I come from a Baptist, Christian Baptist background, and it's been a whole journey, and unfortunately a very relatable one, I'm sure, to a lot of people in the queer community. I've been out to my friends, and I kind of started to identify myself myself and trying to figure all that all the fun stuff out in high school. Funny enough, it was really when I was when I joined the theater community, where I was able to be like, oh, I can ask these questions. I'm not the only one that's going through this, because growing up, I grew up and it was literally just my house, my school, and my church. That was literally the three communities that I was allowed to be in. My parents were not only very conservative, but just very strict people. And so when I was able to be in this community in which, in the theater community, I was able to talk to a lot of friends who are queer and who had their own journeys and their own. And I remember one day I sat down with a really amazing friend, Claire, and they told me. I remember I asked them, because at first I said, okay, I am queer, I'm not straight. I grew up always thinking that I was gay. That was kind of my thing, because you hear these words in church and you're like, oh, if you're not straight, then you're gay and it's a sin and all these all of these different horrible messages. So in my head it's okay, I know I'm not straight, so then I must be gay. That's what it is. And then I got to high school, and then I met a girl and fell in love, and it was really confusing, extremely confusing. So I had this friend that kind of helped guide me through that, and at the beginning, when I started to come to terms with the realization that I didn't have to label myself, that I was also existing in a community that respected me enough and loved me enough to be you be who you want to be. You don't owe us any explanation. I think for me that was absolutely amazing and extremely liberating, and I was able to then continue in that relationship and just continue to explore who I was. I was also 15 years old. So in many ways you don't know who the hell you are. So but then at some point later on throughout my high school experience, I was so much more comfortable in who I was, or I was learning to be, at least with my friends in my community. I started to come out to some of my friends at church too, and some of my friends at at school, and it wasn't the thing that I announced to everyone. It did feel it's not a secret, but it's still it's still an aspect of myself that that I didn't owe any explanation to. And I think because of the background that I came from, that concept was actually really comforting concept for me. That I didn't know anyone any explanations. Until at some point I realized I want a label. I do exist in a community that prides themselves, I feel in these labels. And I didn't know where I fit, because I always thought that I was gay. And I remember sitting down with my friend, and we'd be for hours, and I'd be okay, what's this? And they'd be okay, so if you're bisexual, this is kind of what it means, and by definition, if you're pansexual, if you're demisexual, and then they started going through all these words that I didn't even know, I genuinely didn't even know. And it was amazing. I feel for me, that's one of my first just beautiful queer experiences that made me realize that not only was I accepting myself, but I was also being accepted into something.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
that's really beautiful. Yes. Especially coming from a background where I grew up with a community. To fear that I would lose that at some point. It was very terrifying, because I need that. I know that I needed that. I need family, I need community, I mean, everyone does.
Yeah.
Everyone ultimately does.
We really do.
And in terms of labels, we've talked about this. I sat in the term bisexuality very comfortably for such a long time, and I think that term in itself has come up with a lot of questions in these past few recent years, because of because just our generation educating ourselves a lot more with gender identity and what that means to not only the world, but specifically our community, because everyone has different mindsets on that, and I feel it's imperative for us to educate ourselves and continuously create that space for every single one of us in this community.
Yes.
So, I mean, a lot of people have their opinions on what bisexuality means, and I don't know if this is, the right thing, but for me, it's always been like, I love people. I love people for who they are. And if I meet someone that, just like makes my heart flutter, then that's what it does. And we talk about, pansexual, and a lot of people would be like, well, that's the term that you should be using, not this. And I was like, and that leads into a really very interesting conversation, which I don't know the right answer to, like, quite frankly. But the best that I can do. I mean, even in straight play, I just directed a play in the theater department that was literally about this one male character who goes on a date with his current girlfriend, and he's about to propose to her. And at this dinner date, he runs into his ex-boyfriend. And the thing is that his current girlfriend doesn't know that he's bisexual. So it leads into this whole, this whole situation about like what it's like for someone who's bi or pan, to deal with that, especially in a patriarchal society. And it's not to like, oh, woe is man, because not at all. But it does affect many people in many different ways. And I feel like that's that got the conversation going with in our musical theater. I mean, in Rocky, because people came up to me and like, oh, this was amazing, but why is it promoted as like a bisexual production if in the line he says that he likes people? And once again, it was the same conversation. And I was like, and it's not, I take no offense to it. I think it's a very important conversation.
It is.
And I feel like we should continue to expand like our acceptance, especially if you consider yourself bisexual. I've heard this from a lot of different people that they have expanded that definition in their mind's eye of including all gender identities. And that's kind of how I feel. Like, that's generally how I feel when I use that. But for the most part, because I know the controversy behind it, I use queer.
Yeah,
queer is nice and easy.
Gay.
I use gay.
I use gay.
I use gay too.
We were just talking about that. Is like another really cool thing about his show was that like, so the waiter's the ex-boyfriend, and the waiter, it kind of also sees the protagonist, the bi person, as gay, right? Like, doesn't sort of almost like marginalize. Yeah, well, like people, we talk about bi erasure, right? But bi erasure is not only from non-queer people. Queer people do it to ourselves. I consider myself I consider myself pansexual because, and I really think it's what semantics at that point about how bi is like two, so it means that like it's the two,
right?
So I use the term pan because for me it includes people that don't fit under those two, but at the same time, most, if not all, bisexual people I know are not like, I would never date someone non-binary. Like, that's not the case at all. It's really just the word choice. That's how I see it. But like for me personally, I like to use pan because I think maybe also it's especially because I'm a non-binary person that I'm like, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so, but I do think, like you said, it's an important conversation. But like, I think that, like I said, I don't think that people who are labeling themselves as bisexual, and maybe there are some, because
and
like
there
are people that are.
But I would like to, sorry to interrupt, but once again, I've always said this, and then a few years ago I used to say this about my relationship with like my spirituality, because I still identified with Christianity a lot back in the day, and when I would say, oh yeah, I'm Christian, I'm a queer Christian, and people would be like, explain yourself. And I always felt the need to use that as part of my identity, because a lot of people then say like, oh, I'm not religious, I'm just spiritual. And because they want to separate themselves from that conversation. But I'd be like, no, I believe that we as Christian community need to change. And I want to be that change. So if I take that ownership of that, of that title or ideology, and then start to implement like revolutionary like change and love with that identity, and my hope would be that we eventually, just as an entire identity, start to adopt those like that more acceptance, and that's kind of the way I view the term bisexuality. It's like it's my hope that as someone who continues to use this, it becomes synonymous with just the acceptance of all gender identities within that orientation.
I think the beautiful part about being a part of our community is like we're challenged to like question who we are, where do we fit, and you talked about the power of labels and how like we kind of do have to name ourselves so we can know. And I do find myself like when we ask someone what their sexuality is, like we're so ready with the pitchforks, we're so ready with the gender, like, and that's okay because it really is like who we are. It's xenophobia. We're scared of what's different from ourselves. It terrifies us. But I think that's what's beautiful. Like, as all these definitions are expanding, there are people that are just tapping out before you even start the discussion. And that's when it's going to stop. That's when you're not going to learn anything. Because we're still learning, and you think it's easy to, like, not know whether or not I might be with a girl one day. Like, no, that's hard too.
Yeah.
So just being open about the definitions expanding is important, because they're always going to be changing.
Yeah.
Literally. We're all going to become weirder and weirder.
Yeah. I was going to say something else about labels, is that, so I was saying earlier that, like, even throughout high school, I didn't feel comfortable labeling myself, even though it was really, let's be real, it's always been obvious that I was queer. All the people who bullied me were right. I'm gay.
And that's
okay?
the hardest part, that they were right.
That's the no, but at the same time, it's like,
Yeah.
you want to know what? I'm awesome. I'm doing really cool things. I'm living an awesome life, and I'm happy with myself, and I'm open about myself. And those people, maybe they can't say the same. But like, I didn't start even really coming out until I got to college.
Wow.
And I know, right?
Wow.
Even though it was always really obvious. I was always the same, like,
Yeah.
me-ish.
Yeah.
But like, I'm also really glad that I didn't start coming out in high school, because I'm still learning more and more about myself now.
That's
But
nice.
also like, my stepsister, she came out as a lesbian. I don't think she would care about me telling this story. I should have asked, but who cares? She'll live. Allison, I love you. But she came out as a lesbian when she was like 15 or 16, and then she went off to college and realized that she was bi, and then she had this moment where she was like, she didn't feel valid in coming out as bi because she had already come out as a lesbian. And then what happens is, all the people in your family are like, I thought you were a lesbian, I didn't know you were bi. And it's like, girl, she was 15. She was figuring things out about herself, you know what I mean? And but anyway, it's like there's nothing wrong with coming out and then changing, but at the same time, like, I'm kind of glad I didn't, because I have never felt that pressure to, like, remain one thing. Like, I'm kind of glad that people didn't, like, only start to see me as, like, a bisexual woman, because now I consider myself, one, to not be a woman. I mean, I still identify so much with, like, what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a girl, femininity, what it means to be a daughter, what it means to be a sister. I identify with all of that stuff. But I also identify with being a gender non-conforming, non-binary person. And that has also, like, and like I said, like, I use the term pansexual now. Just like you were saying, like, I feel like labeling myself to appease others that are not queer, I am not really down for. But like, throwing out my little labels so that the queer people know exactly who I am, I like that. I like that. You know what I mean? Like, it's different. Like, and that's another reason why I usually just end up saying that I'm, like, a queer person. It's because then I don't have to get into the, like, whole, like, well, I'm pansexual, but I'm also demisexual, but I'm also non-binary gender, you know what I mean? Which is, like, valid, and I love shouting those from the rooftop, because then people have to listen to it. But also, it's so much more fun if I'm just like, I'm queer, like a queer person.
I know, because you guys are in the queer community, and also...
Wait, we're in the queer community? I'm sorry.
You are totally fine. In the artist community, but I wanted to ask, like, you know, there's always lack of representation for all minorities. Have you noticed that in the artist community? And I also wanted to ask, like, are there specific struggles? I know for journalism, like, it's a man's world, which is so unfortunate, because all minorities are so overlooked in journalism. And I wanted to ask if you guys have noticed these things in the communities you are a part of.
I'm so excited to talk right now. Okay, so we have a lesbian theater professor named Jennifer Richardson, and I actually, for an assignment, I think a semester or two ago, I interviewed her for a podcast, and it was full circle. And we were talking about how even in, like, theater, where it is so gay, like, when you tend to think about, like, gay people in theater, let's be honest, traditionally you think of men, right? You don't really think, like, lesbians in theater. And when you think about gay plays in theater, most of them are gay men, right? Like, there's when I think of like well-known gay female plays, it's Fun Home, in my opinion. And I'm sure there's more than that. Like, even in film, like, and like I said, I don't identify completely with being a woman, but I also do. I'm a very femme presenting person, and I do identify with being, like, a girl, a sister, a daughter. So it's you want to know what? Things are not black and white. I can exist in all of those identities. And I'm valid. But
you are valid.
Like, we were talking about how and like, it's definitely changing. I'm a playwright. I guess it's time that I start doing this. But back in May, I actually wrote a queer femme love story. It was called Magnets, and it was about just like a lesbian couple, essentially. Well, a girl who, one of the characters, I'm sure, we don't know if she was like bi or whatever. They both could have been, but anyway, it was a girl on girl relationship.
Yeah.
And it was angsty and all this kind of stuff. And it's just, I just love to be able to be a person who is writing that material.
Yeah.
It's so important.
Like we were
on a hand. You can count the amount of plays that are written for gay people, for lesbian people,
yeah.
for non-binary people.
Yeah.
Oh,
Let's
talk about that.
period.
Yeah.
Let's get in that. How many plays do we have for non-binary people? I'm sure there are some,
Like,
but
where?
like where? Definitely not well known. Not
yeah.
not as easily accessible as
Right.
like
Angels in America.
I was gonna say
Everyone
Angels in America.
knows.
Great play though. That is not shade to Angels in America,
no,
obviously.
But it's just
But
like,
it's
we're
true,
used-
like-
it's like the one piece that we had that it's like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
doing that.
But it's just like
Yeah.
it really is definitely like when you think of, for me, and Jen and I were both talking about this, when you think of like theater, you normally think of, I feel like, gay men and straight women, right? Like
Yeah.
like
Yes.
a lot of the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And obviously, that's not all that there is. We
Right.
are an example of
Yeah.
that. But like when you think of like the forefront and who gets the most, I would say maybe attention, recognition, it tends to be gay men and straight women. But like
Yes, it is.
definitely, you know, like we were talking about how that is something that there needs more of. And
Yeah.
also just like this isn't even about like just art in this department, but like I am someone who frequents a lot of like drag shows in WeHo, and I, as a queer femme presenting person in an area that is so gay,
Yeah.
feel ostracized.
Yes.
I feel unwanted and
Yeah.
sort of looked at weird because it tends to be a lot of like
You should feel that way
cis
in
gay
a
men, like
place-
we're supposed to be so loud and proud and queer,
Yeah.
but it's like only if you're like a man,
cute-
or like a cute
Yeah.
white
Yeah,
man. You know what I mean?
right.
Like,
Yeah,
and
let's
that's
talk
let's
about
let's
that.
be
No,
let's be
it's
real.
true.
Like, and that's really frustrating,
Yeah.
especially because I don't even identify with being like a woman. So it's like you're gonna look at me differently for being a woman, and it's like in several
That's
ways
not-
it makes me. You know what I mean? There's just so many
Yeah.
layers.
There
of,
are
like,
a lot of levels.
there are a lot of
to
levels
it.
of like
Uh-huh.
wrong for that.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting when you like hop into like queer spaces and then you feel even less welcomed than like spaces that are
100%.
not necessarily inherently queer.
Yeah.
I don't go to WeHo. It is not a community in which I feel wanted. I'm Latinx, Mexican American, and even within like representation, I do believe that gay men overall do get more representation, specifically in media, like in films.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
But then a lot of those relationships that we end up seeing are also white.
Yeah.
That's a
men.
very, very, very good distinction to make because
100%,
for
yes.
sure, like
Yeah.
I do not mean to, let me,
No,
I know
no.
you know I mean this, but let me just clarify that like it's the men that we're seeing the most of, the gay men, they're
Yeah.
white. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're always going to get less representation for minorities.
And if we're
always.
talking about
Yeah.
layers, it's like when I go see The Inheritance, on Broadway, it was a beautiful piece, and it was written by Matthew Lopez,
Yeah.
a Latinx,
Mhm.
and yet 98% of the people that were up there were white ballerina males, perfect physique, and like chiseled chins and all that stuff like that. And I think coming into the theater community as a brown, I've dealt with like weight issues my entire life, so I think regardless of what other people assume, I deal with those things regardless of whatever like shape or size my body takes year in and year out, and because of that always affects kind of how I'm viewed as. It won't be the number one number one casting option when I go in to read for even like a gay role or like a queer role,
Yeah.
when I do find one.
Yeah. So real.
Yeah.
And not only that, but I really had to learn to with the journey of like self-love and even like now with these past like maybe decade of like representation of like the queer men specifically, I romanticize love as falling in love or being loved by a white man. That is like a thing that
Built
I was
in.
taught.
Even outside of the queer community, so many people have it that way.
Oh,
So that's
100%.
it's so bad.
Uh-huh.
It's so unfortunate.
There's so many
Yeah.
layers to it.
Yeah.
It's such a complicated conversation, and I'm really glad that we're bringing it up now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
being a part of theater arts, or even just like as an actor who will probably do, you know, stage and film work, it's important to talk about it because that's what we promote. That's how we create. That's how we push boundaries. That's how we create boxes. You know, so you really like media does really have power, even in journalism. You know,
Period.
Yeah.
One of the main reasons I am a journalist.
I love that.
Let's be real.
I'm not trying to be pessimist about it because I do believe that we're you know, we're changing that. But it is something, especially in the educational realm. I loved it because being at CSULB in this theater department, I have felt it's been less of an issue in my own head of being boxed in.
Absolutely.
Or even considering my body or my skin color or my sexual orientation before performing anything. It hasn't been. I mean, I'm playing Brad right now in Rocky Horror,
And that's
which is
iconic.
traditionally like usually a thin white
a thin
male.
white male.
Yeah.
And like we love them too, but like
We do,
yeah,
but it's just
time to break that mold.
exactly. So I think if we're talking about like our life here at CSULB life here, I think that's an amazing thing that the department has let me just feel free of, like become like freedom. But I'm not done, and I know that eventually when I do, you know, continue to try to break out into the industry, like that's a whole other thing. And I have learned that you know, the most important thing is to be confident within yourself, you know. But it is tough. It is a tough thing to deal with representation. And then we talk about like the extreme lack of, you know, like non-binary roles, and also in the educational realm in theater, still trying to break that binary. You know, you're giving monologues, you're given scenes, you know, you're asked to continuously like play these roles. And I've never had to experience this as someone who does identify as a cis male, but I've never had to experience like the dilemma in which then I'm being placed in boxes in my own art form that's supposed to make me feel safe.
Yeah.
You know? So that is like a really big thing that I feel like, even though we look at arts as some of the you know, the departments are always kind of advanced in terms of like, or progressive, like
Advanced.
progressive
Advanced.
progressive
Period.
I think especially in the educational system, there's still a lot of change that needs to be seen in terms of like inclusivity, and in terms of, and at that point it really becomes of like not just like who's gonna tell these stories, but like when are we gonna start telling our stories?
Absolutely.
Because we can sit here and wait for someone else to do it, or we can have amazing playwrights.
Oh,
Like,
little old
Abbey
me.
and
it's
tell these. It's important.
so groundbreaking what Threshold does.
Oh, let's just talk about it. Sorry.
Yeah, no, let's talk.
Let's talk about it.
Because students are able to write, direct, create whatever they want. Literally, it's so awesome. Abbey just had their show go up. Manny, you too.
And not to completely fully sidetrack, but I mean, Coda brought something up that I'd love for anyone who's listening and has the opportunity or the desire to tell like their unique stories. Is that we do have an undergraduate theater company at CSULB called Theater Threshold, run by the students, produced by students. Shout out to my CSULB staff. I love you guys.
He's on the board, you know, no big deal. He is.
And you're like such a
you
good
better
member for
work.
them to have. Like,
yeah,
if you
he's
can't
amazing.
see it, Manny is a genius.
Yeah, anyway. But what we do is we create space for student artists from across campus. You don't have to be a theater major. Anyone can submit
anybody.
Any of their work.
It's important.
Yes.
I think we should invite that.
There's so many writers and actors outside of the theater.
Oh my god, yeah. I think that would be a really interesting project.
Yes, exactly. Journalism, like y'all write, like that's what we've talked about too. Like I'm an artist, but I'm not a good writer. I would never write anything.
It's hard out here.
It's really hard. But I'm saying we encourage everyone to like submit work. Right? I think our applications are going to open up once again in November. So go to like our CSULB Theater Threshold Instagram, and there'll be a link to like the submissions there. But if you have stories, if you have scripts, anything you wrote, or anything that it's published that you would want to produce or, you know, direct or things like that, like please submit, because it's so important. And it's also like a very unique privilege that we have here on campus, because a lot of theater
extraordinarily
a lot of theater departments don't have that ability to, and it's also designed, student run, student stage managed, directed, and things like that. So yeah, if that interests you, like definitely reach out, because I think more than ever, especially if you're in the queer community or any marginalized group community, like we need stories, and we also need the agency to like tell it ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
The more it happens, the stronger that shit is.
Yeah.
And the less what would be the word? The less I don't have the word for it. The less like special it would be because it's in a way it's still special, but it's more
normalized.
It's normalized, yes.
Yeah.
The more normalized it becomes. But I was gonna say, piggybacking on what Threshold does, is the way that I'm not even 22 years old and I've gotten to see 2 finished 1-act plays be put on for an audience. That is crazy. Because some people write plays their whole life and never get to see them come up. I get a student staff full of like lighting designers, set designers, costume designers, makeup designers, sound, so many people that are not only good at their skills, good at what they do, but they're also extremely passionate about it. The fact that we get to do that, and the fact that like the second one I wrote was not technically queer, but it turned out to be a little queer. Well, anything I do is queer. God damn. But just like that's really cool. And the fact that like, especially going back to like how Magnets was, it was just gay women. Yes, love them. Like the fact that we just got to just be so fucking gay and like not tone it down at all, like that is just amazing. I just love it. And the fact that like totally sidebar, but I work at one of the departments here on campus. I actually work in the Department of Physical Therapy, not as a physical therapist, I just work in the office, but my boss is an older Filipina lady, and she comes to see all my shows.
I saw.
She comes to see
at your show.
She came to see Magnets.
We talked.
She came to see me in Performance Check when I had this Eastern European accent and I was playing like a goat D&D character. Anyway, but I know you would have loved that. You would have loved that. You'd have loved that. It was very funny.
So good. They
But
were the star of the show. Like
stop it. You're feeding my ego. But like to have a role model like that supports me in everything I do, that knows all aspects of my identity. Like just to have that example of a role model who is, she's very straight, but like it's really very special to have that sort of a role model, to where like she always asks me about like who I'm dating, who I'm seeing, doesn't care if it's a boy, a girl, or somewhere in between. It's just the endless support. Like that is so special.
She's not, I don't know, attacking your person.
Never. She loves literally all
embracing
specimens of mine.
it.
And she's also, going back to you being a Christian, I don't think she's Christian, I don't know, but she is very religious. She is a God-loving woman. And there is no part of her that is like feigning an acceptance for me. It is so deep and real, and I could cry about it. Gloria, if you listen to this, actually she's gonna want me to send this to her because I already told her about it. I love you, Gloria. You're very special. Yeah, she's very special. Oh my god, I'm not me tearing up. She's very special.
I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really awesome because I see your guys' relationship, and like you guys are very close and you're able to talk about these things, and I think that's really special. And I know it is an emotional process, very personal. I'm very thankful that you guys are talking about it. I do have one last thing, and it's just about, you guys finding yourselves. How do you think that you have grown since the moment you did find out who you were? And how have you seen that the LGBTQ plus community has improved in areas, or where does it need to improve? And that's my last question.
I'll say that I've definitely become more comfortable, and I feel gay still.
Yes!
I still feel gay. I feel gayer than actually it ever was. The gayest. Every day. Not every day though. Some days I feel less gay, and I think gender, like we really are realizing how much that ties into it too. Like, now I can do my makeup and do my nails, but I don't have to. I don't feel like I have to. And I enjoy both spaces. And I think like love in the community can be really tough, like romantic love especially. I know we always crave it, but I think in the community we find a lot of love, and that shows us more than any kind of man's or theys or woman or anything. I think just loving each other. I think the community does have some growing to do. There is a lot of stigma. Like Abby, I'm not gonna lie, if I went to WEO and I saw you, like, there would be some stigma about it. And that's
Mm.
not right. That is so, that needs, because then it's separate. It's like there's a gay community
Yes.
and there's a queer community. No,
Mm.
we are all the queer community.
Yeah.
LGBTQIA. Who, Joe says the alphabet mafia.
Yeah, the alphabet.
All of the letters, baby. Keep adding them because
2S plus
Oh,
Two-Spirit.
thank you.
Two-Spirit. No, I mean, you don't have to. You
No,
don't have to say
but-
them all, but I just wanted to add that because I've been
Yeah.
hearing it more and more verbalized.
It's so important to recognize.
It's to recognize,
those roots.
especially
Yeah.
on the land we were on.
Hell
Yes.
yeah. Just the inclusivity. It could always be more. I think that's the similarities between our community and theater. You always better criticize it because that's our job.
Yes.
Criticize that shit, do it, and there's always a discussion after. There's always something
Yes.
that you did wrong if there's even a right and wrong. You know what I'm saying? That's the beautiful thing. And that's what that mindset, that like pragmatic, you're disabling your ability to expand your mind. We have to be wrong.
Yeah.
We have to try new things. We have to have a discussion about it. And that makes us cuter.
Yes. Literally gorgeous.
Thank you.
I think one of the things that I'm most proud of, I think, from my journey and sexual identity, is that one, the loss of fear primarily is one of the biggest things. Fear of just being wrong,
yeah.
like that is such a crippling and paralyzing feeling to have.
Oh my God.
Because I remember just at some point being like, I need to work through this, or else I just cannot find contentment and happiness as a human being.
Yeah.
Like, that's just like bottom line. And I think now I'm in such more like of a healthier mindset and such more like open space to like accept love and to give it to myself as well.
Yes.
And
Oh,
some days
Manny.
some days it's not as easy, and like I'm still not out to my parents. That's not like a conversation that I felt comfortable enough to have. I'm out to my siblings and a lot of my family outside, and we've had many of conversations about it. But even within all of that kind of those difficult situations that I still deal with in terms of my family and the communities in which I have pretty much left in terms of like Christian communities, I've lost fear, which I think is the most important thing to do. It's just as a human being, even if you're not dealing with like just queerness or whatever it is, like at any point, like I feel like it's so easy for us as human beings to be paralyzed by fear. And another thing too is, I guess in terms of like identity and things like that, I feel now like I exist in a space in which I can like appreciate and love just like my essence and my soul and my kindness and my connections with people.
Aww.
And it's not to undermine my sexuality at all, but it becomes so less important what I want to do in my bedroom with someone else when I'm just like existing as a human being and connecting with everyone and just like living a good healthy life.
That's awesome.
And I think like primarily that's one of the things that I've learned, because growing up it was exhausting how much I thought about my sexuality.
Oh yeah.
Like it just is.
Oh my God. Feeling like you're doing something wrong is so horrible.
And even once you learn to like accept it and deal like that, but you're still thinking about it all the time, and that's not a bad thing. It's just like, there's so much more to life to it as well, than just that. And it sucks that we live in a society that forces you to consistently contemplate it and find space in which like, am I safe here to talk about it? Am I not safe here to talk about it? And all these different, different things. And I think now I feel so much better about where I am as a queer individual, because it's not a constant thing in like the forefront of my brain. It's not the one thing that defines me. It's one of the many beautiful things that define me.
I love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that that's like, I mean, I could not fathom even like saying these things as like a 10-year-old. But I think
can you imagine like 10-year-olds that are able to do this? That's what we're
working towards.
Yeah, that would be beautiful.
Yes.
10-year-olds that don't have to go through like the traumatic things, that many of us dealt with. But yeah. And then in terms of the last thing I'll say in terms of our community and the ways that it's grown, I think we still need to have a lot more conversations about the consistent evolution of identities and acceptance. and especially with gender identity. Like, I mean, in all honesty, I think for me personally, it wasn't until college where I was like exposed to the conversation of gender identity.
Yeah.
And like, obviously immediately I was like, yeah, I accept it, but it's one thing to accept and then also care enough to understand as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I feel like that is the biggest
Period.
biggest thing, because at the end of the day, if you're not educated, you lose touch, and you don't have to be, you don't have to understand, you don't have to understand to be compassionate. Like, I feel like bottom line, compassion all the way through. But then also I feel like as a community we should care enough to always not just accept people, but like understand them as well. Give them the time of day, so that we create also like that platform for them to like be visible.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is the biggest thing. I've had so many like gay friends be like, how do you like just use like they them in your daily vocabulary?
I know.
I'm like,
Dude.
you guys do it all the time to
time.
refer to multiple people.
Yes.
What are you on about?
It's so and you know, 100%.
Yeah.
And I've had this conversation, and I'm like, it's a lot of your own mental blocks. It's a lot of your own
Yeah.
biases. I said the best thing you can do is, even if you don't understand it, like, screw that. Screw that. Compassion all the way through.
Yeah.
And practice it. Practice it all the time, every single day. And then one day you'll realize, like, why was that something hard for me to understand?
Yeah.
And, you know, that doesn't come out of judgment whatsoever, especially if you care enough to try to,
Yeah.
to get it right for people.
Yeah.
So it's like, ask the questions. Like,
Yes.
ask the
Yeah.
questions. Find the communities in which you feel safe to do so, and then do the work.
So since I started actually genuinely expressing and being fully open with my queerness and my queer identity, I feel like I've grown an indescribable amount, because like I am just the more open I am with myself, the more open I am with others, the more
Period.
authentically myself I am, and then and the
Yeah.
more that I find myself being surrounded by the right people. Because when you're authentically yourself and there are people that don't dig that, they will remove themselves most of the time.
Yeah.
And if they don't, you can go ahead and help them, find their way out the door. And then you end up, the more you are true to yourself and true to like what you want, you need, and what you value, I feel like just your life gets better, right?
Yeah.
Even and that doesn't mean everything gets perfect,
No.
but you're at least able to look at those things and say, like, at least I'm being myself genuinely.
Yeah.
And that will bring you so much unfiltered joy on top of whatever you're dealing with in your life, right? Because we all have shit, right? We all
Yeah.
have shit at the end of the day, always. But like the fact that, like you were saying, we want community. The fact that I have a community that not only accepts me but understands me and makes an effort to understand me.
As you
Yes.
deserve, like getting praise is so important. Like
It's so wonderful. It's so
Yeah.
wonderful because that, like, once I started, I was so insecure and like not confident about being open about my identity. But it's crazy how once I started being open about my identity, how much more confident I became.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I am so much more confident in myself now because I understand myself. I allow myself to understand myself and process my identity, but I also allow myself to show that to the world. And that will give you so much confidence. You know what I mean? And then it's so important. Also, like where I'm from, I said I was from like Riverside and Moreno Valley, like not the most homophobic place on earth, not the least homophobic place on earth for sure, and definitely not the least racist place on earth. I don't have to struggle with that, but whatever. Still doesn't hurt to say.
Yeah.
But then to move to Long Beach, where we're so queer. Mama, you go down to Orange and Broadway, we got rainbow crosswalks. And like we have a beautiful LGBT center on 4th Street, which if you've never gone by there's a gorgeous mural. The whole thing, it's beautiful. We're just in such a, I always say, oh my God, this is really funny. I don't know if you'll keep this, but I always say that I go to liberal school because like, let's be real. Let's be real. Like Long Beach, CSULB, and just Long Beach in general, there are a ways to go, but we are very lucky to be here as opposed to any other places. Because, for example, when we sat down, you asked us our pronouns. Some places they wouldn't even ask you; they'd be like, "That's 2 boys and 1 girl." You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and which is just it's false. But like that is what we would be reduced to in some places. You know?
Yeah.
And so the fact that like that's even asked, and that to me, for a fact, that is the bare minimum. But it's not in some places, right?
Right.
It should be,
It
but
should,
we're
it
like
should.
we're not completely ahead. Like we're not like the work is nowhere near done. Nowhere near done, especially when you get into like the intersectionality of like race and gender and sexuality and all that.
Right.
We have so much improvement and progress to make.
Yeah.
But we're lucky to be where we are, I think. I think we're lucky to be where we are, at least surrounded by the people that we're with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that was it for this episode.
Come see Rocky Horror Picture Show. Oh, sorry.
No, you can totally plug it in. This is your chance to say it.
Yes.
Do y'all know the dates?
It's the first 2 weekends of November.
Yes.
And we have also a preview on October 30th, as well as what is November 2nd? Is that correct?
Yes.
November 2nd. See, I pretty much know the dates.
Yeah.
And you can just go on, like, just mama type that into Google, CSULB Rocky Horror Show, theater arts. There are like there's a lot of queer people in that room.
Yes.
All three of our
So
directors
many.
are queer.
Everyone's
Yes.
Not
Okay.
our musical director,
Right.
and choreographer.
And-
Not, I didn't mean the assistant directors. I
Right.
don't know. One of them is. I don't know about the other
Okay,
one.
yeah.
We'll find out. But like, there are a lot of queer voices in the room, a lot of loud queer voices in the room, and
Yeah.
that is very fun. So if you want to come see a queer show put on by a bunch of queer people, or at least people that are strong allies,
Yes.
come check it out.
Come
It'll be very
through.
fun, and it's in the spirit of the spooky season.
Someone
In the
might die.
What? Someone might die. Multiple people might die. Rocky!
That is gonna be my ending.
Okay.
Sweet, thank you guys so much.